I say, anyone for tennis? You, Stroll? Because apparently that's where you want to be. The rumours are led to be believed. It's been very quiet from me over the last couple of weeks, and it will continue to be so for another couple of weeks, since I am practically on quite a lot of vacations, which have been a long time coming. But I decided to actually jump back in for this little thing because this really did tickle my fancy. Lance Stroll could be leaving Formula 1 for tennis? What? I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card. Did you? I mean, of course, everyone was thinking about what the future of Lance Stroll's career was going to be, but nobody really pegged it was going to be in a completely different sport. But then again, we got Nick de Vries and Nicholas Latifi going into business. I mean, I guess Lance is now going into another sort of sport. I mean, what exactly do these rumours serve? Yes, I know that joke was certainly not an ace one. What can we actually deduce from all of this? Well, according to the rumours, it's stated that Lance Stroll is starting to get a little bit weary about his current place against Fernando Alonso. And anyone would be, because as I've said many times, and I'm now starting to think that Fernando doesn't even know it, he is a teammate killer. Every single teammate he's been up with has had to deal with some kind of resistance from him, with the possible exception of Jenson Button, who just seems to get on with everybody. But for the most part, especially with the young ones, Fernando Alonso just completely decimates them. It's happened to Stoffel Van Dorn, it's kind of happened with Esteban Ocon, but with the backing of the likes of Toto Wolff and the Renault machine, Esteban managed to hold his own, and then of course they were playing fast and loose with, Alonso's contract, but that's besides the point. But it's happened again, and this time, Alonso's not even tried to try and demoralize his teammate. He's been trying to big up Lance for the longest time because he knows where his money comes from. And I'm now starting to think that I think he just is now trying to kill Lance with kindness, just being like, come on Lance, I believe in you. It's like reverse psychology or something like that. But what does this all mean really for not just Lance Stroll, but what about Aston Martin? Because Aston Martin, despite their on-track success, is really not doing so hot when it comes to, well, everything else. Now, Planet F1 was the one to break this idea of the rumours concerning Lance Stroll's future, and they did bring up a very good point that the car company itself is really starting to lose a lot of money, upwards of $500 million at this point, and it's only getting bigger. So they need to find as much cash as they possibly can, and them being potentially fifth in the constructors when they could have been second at the beginning of the year, or even possibly third, that's tens of millions of dollars of prize money being lost. And who is this all being pointed to? Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll's just mediocre driving, I wouldn't say he's the worst driver out there, but he's certainly had a lot of howlers this year, is the possible reason why Aston Martin won't do as well as they were expected to. Now, I never really expected them to be second place throughout the entire season. Aston Martin's 5-year plan is still in motion. They're in the third season of it, and they are punching well above their weight. I just think they've run out of steam for this year, and they really need to try and think about next year where they can be consistently on the podium throughout the entire year instead of just out of the gate. I'm still impressed with Aston Martin's performance. They have done more than enough for this season. They are very much on track. They have exceeded expectations, and Fernando's expectations too. He's going to be around for a very long time, but as for Lance, well, I've always said that his contract is as long as a piece of string. Yeah, it can be as long as you want, or it can be as short as you want. It depends who's the one cutting it. And I think it might be himself. Because Lance Stroll, he's not really the most liked driver out there. I don't know anyone who would consider Lance Stroll to be their favourite driver, because he's just not likeable. And that's just the fact he doesn't put himself out there. In the modern age of social media, where practically all the drivers have some sort of social media presence and people can get to know them. I mean, like the Alpine boys, despite the fact their team's not doing that well, everyone likes them, especially on Instagram. Pierre Gasly is an icon. Daniel Ricciardo, an even bigger icon. Everyone's got something to like about every single driver, but Lance, he deliberately keeps himself out of the spotlight, and it's really to a detriment. I mean, if this was like 10 years ago or something like that, 2013, or even like 15 years ago, people wouldn't bat an eyelid because social media wasn't really a thing. Teams weren't just putting their drivers out on social media every single day to get the content and get the views and get the fans. So Lance Stroll's anonymity would have actually been conventional, normal, and you could have sort of spun it around like Kimi Räikkönen, but either way, you don't see him at all. And I believe that's down to an actual contract thing, that he is not obligated to do any social media stuff, whereas Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martin TikTok account, they're doing stuff all the time. Fernando Alonso just embracing social media to get a brand new fandom of young people who absolutely love him. And I'm loving it too. I never expected Fernando Alonso, one of the most serious drivers on the grid, to be doing funny Chad memes. Lance, every time you do see him, he's just so stale and dull and dry. He just comes across as a whining brat. And, Monaco 2022 really didn't help. So I feel like all of the attention away from him and the constant bashing is starting to get to him. And the fact that he is nearly 100 points behind Alonso, and we're just over halfway through the season, is really not going to be helping. So, well, are these rumors possibly valid? Well, could make a lot of sense, because a lot of you guys in the comments, and these have been really good points, is that if they wanted to get rid of Lance Stroll, they wouldn't just simply cut him off entirely. It would have been Lance's own decision to possibly try something else. Like if Aston Martin wanted to rebuild their Valkyrie program in Le Mans or the World Endurance Championship, stick Lance Stroll in there, spearheading the Stroll name like they were doing in Formula 1. Okay, that might have been a decent idea, but tennis? Well, maybe. So, if that were true and Lance Stroll does leave, then what sort of legacy does he leave for Formula 1? Well, not a whole lot, actually. Sure, he's gotten 3 podiums, and he's one of the youngest guys to have ever gotten a podium, especially in his debut season. Technically, he's actually managed to do more than what Oscar Piastri has done so far. I mean, a podium for Oscar this season is pretty much just an expectation rather than a desire, but at the moment, Oscar hasn't done that, and Lance has. And that was in a 2017 Williams. I mean, that's actually not that bad. But ever since then, he's just not had the will or the drive to really capitalize on it. Not even in 2020, which was arguably his best chance to actually really score points without any interference from a teammate, because Checo was good, and he did get a win for that team, but it should have meant that Lance should have been able to do almost as well. I mean, he got that pole in the Turkish Grand Prix, sure, but other than that, he's just been very forgettable. Sure, he's managed to get a couple of 4th places here and there, he's gotten a couple of good positions and some good grid slots when it's been damp, but other than that though, it's just, he's been fine. He's not been terrible, he's just been, just not really a lot to say. So, the idea of him going off to a completely different sport could be a means to clear his head. I mean, he is a young guy. He's only in his early 20s. He's been around for a very long time. He started when he was 17. So to go into a completely different category where he could go on for another 10 years and maybe do well, that could be something. I think it might be time for Lance Stroll, and it might be something for him to actually consider to do something else, because he's just simply not in the groove anymore. He's just not really feeling it, because this Aston Martin car is the best car they've ever made. And in terms of the Silverstone team, it's the best car that they've made since the 2020 pink Mercedes, which technically they did make, even though they got inspiration somewhere else, but they still had to produce the thing. But I just feel like Lance isn't doing enough, whereas Fernando is. If Lance was just maybe a fraction better, like he were at the top of like the rest of the group, like he was doing slightly better than the Ferrari drivers, like another 30 points, that would have been enough for Aston Martin to be securely in the fight for 2nd place. Whereas now they're starting to fall behind and Ferrari is catching up. They are actually starting to get their act together, and McLaren as well. I mean, my boys in McLaren, I mean, it's just like, it's remarkable how they managed to improve, and this could actually really pull a fast one and make Aston Martin end up 5th in the Constructors. And I'm pretty sure that Papa Stroll, having gotten a taste of being 2nd place in the Constructors and then falling down to, well, I mean, just a couple of positions higher than they were last year, and their car was just like way worse, that's not good. So I'm pretty sure that the two of them, Papa and Son, will have a talk, and they might be talking about doing something else. When is this going to happen? I don't know. Maybe at the end of next year, maybe at the end of 2025. I don't know. Could be the end of this season, because we do get silly season stuff, and 2024 silly season is going to be absolutely bonkers. But who could actually replace Lance Stroll? Well, I have done a video about that, and I will explain to you all about my ideas about who could replace Lance right here.